The colonel laughed at a little black girl's request to use the shooting range until she broke every SEAL shooting record. Laughter echoed through the officers' club at Fort Braxton Military Base like the crack of a cannon, causing crystal goblets to rattle on mahogany tables. "Are you serious, girl?" Colonel Marcus Steele leaned forward in his leather armchair, his blue eyes sparkling with cruel amusement as he watched the 12-year-old girl standing alone before his desk, surrounded by a dozen senior officers. Maya Johnson maintained the perfect military posture her father had taught her, her small fists clenched at her sides, holding tightly to a yellowed envelope. Her father's Medal of Honor, Sergeant David Johnson, hung silently on her skinny kist, a painful reminder of why she was standing there in that humiliating month, facing men who looked at her as if she were an unwanted insect. "Sir, I would like to request permission to use the firing range today," Maya repeated in a steady voice, though her hands trembled imperceptibly. "It's the 3rd anniversary of my father's death in combat, and I wanted to honor him by practicing shooting. As he taught me before he left for his last mission." Steele burst out, laughing even louder, slamming his hand on the table so hard that the other officers' whiskey glasses swayed dangerously. "Did you hear that? The girl thinks she knows how to shoot. What's next? She wants to fly our fighter jets too." The other officers around them began to laugh as well, some whispering poisonous comments that Maya pretended not to hear. "Children should playing with dolls," muttered Major Thompson. "Little girls belong in school, not messing around with guns," added Captain Williams, causing a new wave of cruel laughter. What Colonel Steele didn't know, and Maya kept as her most precious secret, was that David Johnson had not been an ordinary soldier for 6 consecutive years. Every afternoon after school, every Saturday and Sunday afternoon, Maya had trained tirelessly with a man who secretly held gun official record for best marksman on the base, records that were whisperingly among the most experienced soldiers, but never officially recognized. 3 years ago, when the tears were still fresh and the pain of loss pierced her chest like a hot knife, Maya had made a whispered promise at the grave covered by the American flag. A promise that no one else had heard, but she carried like a burning flame inside her heart, fueling every day off-scred training she had undertaken since then. "Listen here, girl," Steele said, standing up and walking around the table with deliberately intimidating steps, his imposing figure casting a shadow over Maya. "This is no place for children to play soldier. Guns are not toys, and our shooting range is not a playground. Go home, watch some cartoons, and let the adults take care of serious matters." The humiliation burned Maya's cheeks like hot iron, but she took a deep breath, feeling something familiar grow inside her. Not pure anger, but something much more powerful and controlled. The same isocom her father had taught her to cultivate when the world tried to diminish her. When teachers doubted her intelligence, when classmates mocked her determination. "With all due respect, sir," she replied, her voice carrying a strange serenity that made some of the officers stop laughing momentarily. "I have all the necessary documentation, proper supervision approved by the Military Family Affairs Department, and the security requirements have been met. My request is within base regulations." Major Peterson, sitting to Steele's right, nearly choked on his whiskey. "The little girl knows the regulations. How cute." More laughter echoed through the room, but this time some of the officers seemed slightly uncomfortable with the cruelty of the moment. It was then that Maya's eyes met Steele's for the first time with full intensity, and something in that gaze made his arrogant smile falter for a split second. There was something there, a quiet determination. It contained strength that seemed too big to fit in the body of a 12-year-old. It was the same look that war veterans carried, a serenity that only exists in those who have faced much worse storms and lived to tell the story. Steele shook his head with theatrical disdain. "Stubborn little girl. Very well. Since AO insists so much, how about we do a little test? If you can hit at least 3 out of 10 targets at 50 meters, I'll personally sign your authorization. But when you fail miserably, I want you compromise never to bother important men with these childish fantasies again. Maya felt something ignite inside her chest, but she kept her face impassive. I accept your proposal, sir. There, in front of all the looks of contempt and mockery, she stood firm like Simeon guarding a secret too powerful to be revealed before the right time. What those men didn't know was that Maya Johnson wasn't there just to honor her father. She was there to fulfill a promise that would turn the most painful humiliation of her life into the most epic demonstration that military base would ever witness. If this story of courage and determination is touching your heart, get ready to discover how a simple 12-year-old little girl was able to rewrite the record books and humiliate some of the most arrogant military men the U.S. Army has ever produced. Steele's predatory smile widened, like a shark that smells blood in the water. Perfect. Let everyone witness this lesson in knowing your place. He gestured theatrically to the other officers. Gentlemen, let's head to the firing range and watch a child learn about reality. Major Thompson stood up, rubbing his hands together with cruel anticipation. This is going to be better than a movie. The little girl will run out crying before she can even hold Fagin. Right. The other officers laughed like hyenas, already imagining the public humiliation that was to come. As they walked through the corridors of Thebes, Maya kept a few steps behind the group, listening to every poisonous comment they made without bothering to lower her voice. I bet she faint at the first shot, whispered Captain Williams, or she start crying for her mommy. What none of them knew was that Maya had been to that same firing range hundreds of times. For 3 years since her father's death, she had secretly come every Saturday morning at 5:30 a.m. when the base was still asleep. The maintenance soldier, a war veteran who had served with David Johnson, would quietly open the gate for her, an unspoken agreement between people who understood the true meaning of honoring the dead. Arriving at the firing range, Steele pointed to a table where several Standary's weapons lay. Pick your tool of humiliation. Little girl, I recommend the lightest one. Maybe you'll at least be able to hold it without dropping it. Maya walked to the table with the same calm she had shown in the officers' club. Her fingers ran over the available weapons before settling on a Glock 19 pistol, the exact same model her father had used to teach her the basics of shooting when she was only 7 years old. Interesting choice, Steele commented with feigned interest. At least you have good taste in failing with style. More laughter echoed throughout the group. But some soldiers who had gathered to watch the show seemed less convinced of the amusement. Sergeant Rodriguez, the base's shooting instructor, approached with an uncomfortable expression. He had served with David Johnson and knew the man's legendary reputation. Colonel, perhaps we should consider additional supervisions for the minor. Nonsense. Steele cut him off abruptly. The girl wants to play soldier, so let her learn like real soldiers. No clicks, no hand-holding. His voice carried a cruelty that made even some of his own subordinates frown. Maya checked her weapon with such fluid professional movements that Rodriguez blinked twice. She ejected the magazine, checked the chamber, tested the trigger. Every movement executed with automatic precision of someone who had performed that routine thousands of times. Well, Steele murmured, his amusement growing. Looks like Daddy taught you a few basic tricks before. Well, before he wasn't around to protect you anymore. The cruel comment about David's death made Ma's blood boil, but she kept her expression impassive. Then, something unexpected happened. Maya closed her eyes for a few seconds, and when she reopened them, everyone present could see a subtle but profound transformation. The nervous 12-year-old girl had disappeared, replaced by something much more focused and dangerous. Ready when you are, Maya said, her voice carrying an icy confidence that made some of the veterans present look at each other with recognition. It was the same tone experienced soldiers used moments before carrying out impossible missions. Steele positioned himself behind her with his arms crossed. Surrounded by his officers who whispered bets on how many shots she would miss. All right, little girl, 10 shots. Target 50 meters away. Remember, you only need to hit 3 to win our little agreement. It should be easy for someone with your family training. What those arrogant men didn't know was that David Johnson hadn't just been a good marksman. He had been the unofficial instructor for the best snipers on Febase. The man other soldiers turned to when they needed to improve their skills for life and death missions. And Maya had absorbed every lesson, every technique, every secret. He had learned it in 2 decades of military service. More importantly, they didn't know about the 847 hours Maya had spent training over the past 3 years. Every Saturday morning, every holiday, every free moment she had, all dedicated to honoring her father's memory by becoming something he will be proud to see. When Maya took up her shooting position, something in the atmosphere changed. The wind seemed toady down. The laughter ceased momentarily, and even Steele felt a strange chill down his spine, as if he were about to witness something that will change his understanding of many things. Each new taunt, each cruel comment only fueled something inside. Her that her oppressors couldn't see. Assailant's strength being strengthened by the very injustice they sought to impose. What those privileged men didn't know was that every act of contempt was writing their own sentence of humiliation. And Maya Johnson was about to become the executive of that long-delayed justice. Mia assumed the shooting position with movement so fluid that Sergeant Rodriguez frowned out. There was something deeply familiar about that stance. The feet positioned with military precision, the shoulder sailing, the breath controlled. It was like watching a ghost from the past take shape before his eyes. "What are you waiting for, little girl?" Steele taunted, his voice echoing across the field. "Like a tuning horn. Maybe you need some help holding the gun. Or do you want Samionetto point the target at you?" The other officers laughed like well-fed hyenas, satisfied with their own sense of humor. Maya closed her eyes for 3 seconds. Exactly as her father had taught her, "Take a deep breath, princess. Feel fluent. Listen to the silence between your heartbeats. The perfect shot happens in that moment of stillness." David's voice echoed in her memory like a whispered prayer. When she opened her eyes again, something had completely changed in the atmosphere. Several soldiers passing by stopped to watch, drawn by a different energy emanating from the small figure standing in the firing line. It was as if an invisible switch had been flipped out. "Ready when you give the signal," May said, her voice carrying a supernatural calm that made even Steele hesitate for a moment. It was then that Sergeant Rodriguez approached discreetly. A veteran of 3 tours in Afghanistan, he had served under David Johnson during the most dangerous operation of his career. Rodriguez knew exactly who had trained this girl and what that meant for the arrogant men who were about to receive the lesson of their lives. Colonel Rodriguez said respectfully but firmly, "Perhaps we should consider using proper hearing protection for everyone % for safety." Steele looked at him. "IRRITABLY. Sergeant, it's just 10 shots from a scared kid. We don't need full military protocol to watch a failure in the making." Rodriguez nodded silently, but positioned himself strategically where he could intervene if necessary. He knew something no one else there knew. David Johnson hadn't just been an exceptional soldier. He had been the unofficial instructor for the base's most lethal snipers. The man other veterans sought out when they needed to learn TechniQuest could save lives in combat zones. "All right, little girl," Steele announced with growing cruel amusement. "You have 60 seconds for your 10 shots. Starting now. Mia's first shot echoed across the field like a dry, precise THUNDERCLAP dot before the echo had even faded. Thiesken's shot followed with a cadence that made several veterans standing nearby straighten involuntarily. It was the rhythm of someone who had fired thousands of times, not hundreds. Through his binoculars, Rodriguez watched the target with growing admiration and terror. "My God," he whispered to himself, "she's better than her father." Steele was still laughing then. The third shot rang out, but his slaughter began to sound forced. There was something about the precision of those shots that didn't match his expectations of public humiliation. "At least she's quick," Major Thompson commented, trying to keep the mockery in his voice. "Maybe she wants to get the embarrassment over with." What they didn't know was that Maya had spent the last 3 years not only practicing shooting, but studying every movement, every breath, every heartbeat her father had taught her. For 1,095 consecutive days, she had woken up at 5 a.m. to practice at a makeshift range behind her house using paper targets, taped to trees. More importantly, they didn't know about the 847 hours of mental training Maya had developed, concentration techniques that allowed her to completely block out external distractions and enter a state of focus that trained soldiers took years to achieve. The fourth, fifth, and sixth thoughts followed with a mechanical precision that began to cause uneasy whispers among the observers. Even the officers who had been mocking her began to exchange nervous glances. "It's taking too long to check the target," muttered Captain Williams, his previous confidence beginning to waver. Rodriguez knew exactly why no one was rushing to check the first results. Some of the veterans present had already recognized its sound, that distinctive metal licking that only happens when a bullet hits the exact center of a metal target. Maya continued firing with unnatural calm, each shot following the previous zone with perfectly timed intervals. There was no rush, no anxiety, just the systematic execution of a skill that had been forged through years of quiet dedication. The seventh shot made Steele stop laughing completely. The eighth made several officers stop whispering. The ninth created an absolute silence that spread across the field like an invisible wave. When Mia prepared for the 10th and final shot, something extraordinary happened. Instead of aiming directly at the target, she adjusted her position slightly, compensating for a gust of wind that no one else had noticed. It was the kind of instinctive adjustment that only truly exceptional marksmen made automatically. The last shot echoed across the field with a finality that seemed to announce that something important had just happened. Maya lowered her gun with fluid movements, engaged the safety catch, and turned to face Steele directly. 10 shots complete as requested, sir," she said with perfect military formality. For the first time since he had arrived at the firing range, Steele looked genuinely uncertain about what he had just witnessed. There was something about Mia's calm confidence that didn't match the humiliation he had so carefully planned. Rodriguez approached with high-powered binoculars, preparing to verify what everyone already suspected, but no one wanted to admit out loud. The veteran had seen many exceptional marksmen throughout his career, but he had never witnessed anything that so challenged his own expectations of what was human-lippable. What those arrogant men didn't know was that Maya Johnson hadn't come just to fulfill a humiliating agreement. She had come to prove that some legacies are greater than the people who try to diminish them, and the true strength often grows in the very places where there see only apparent weakness. When Rodriguez focused his binoculars on the target 50 meters away, his face pat in a way that made even Steele feel a strange chill down his spine. It was as if the veteran had just witnessed something that defied his understanding of elements of human ability. The silence that followed Maya's last shot was so deep that everyone could hear the wind whispering through the flags on the base. Rodriguez kept his binocular focused on the target, his expression gradually changing from professional curious to utter disbelief, then to something that looked almost like irreverence. "Sergeant Rodriguez," Steele said in a forced casual voice that carried a note of growing anxiety. "What's the result? I'm sure we can't start preparing the lesson on reality for our young friend here." Rodriguez lowered his binoculars, his face pallid as a sheet. For a few seconds, he simply stared at Maya with an expression that was a mixture of admiration and terror. "Colonel," his voice came out, as if the words refused to leave his throat. I need you to check personally." Steele's confidence wavered for the first time. "What do you mean check for yourself? How many did she hit? 5? 6? His voice carried feebly concealed desperation of someone who feels the ground beginning to crumble beneath his feet. "Sir," Rodriguez held out the binoculars with slightly trembling hands. "All 10 shots, they?" He paused, shaking his head as if couldn't believe what he had seen. "Colonel, you'd better check for yourself." Steele grabbed the binocular throw, his hands suddenly unsteady when he focused on the target 50 meters away. His arrogant expression crumbled like a house of cards in a storm. Waithsaw defied not only his expectations, but his understanding of the limits of human ability. All 10 shots had not only hit the center of the target, but had created such a tight cluster that it looked like a single slightly enlarged hole. It was the kind of accuracy that professional snipers fought years to achieve, executed by a 12-year-old girl as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "That's impossible," Steele muttered, checking and rechecking the target through his lens. "It has to be some kind of trick, faulty equipment." Something. Mayo remained silent, watching the disintegration of the arrogance that had plagued her just minutes before. There was no cruel triumph in her expression, only the calm dignity of someone who hadn't exactly what she promised to do. Major Thompson stepped forward, snatched the binoculars from Steele's trembling hands, and checked for himself. His reaction was even more dramatic. Hair coiled as if he had been physically punched. "My God, that cluster is better than anything I've seen in 20 years of military service." One by one, all the officers checked the target. One by one, their confident expressions turned tousle in shock. Captain Williams, who had mocked the idea of a little girl's place, was completely speechless at their futile proof of the competence he had underestimated. It was then that Rodriguez made a decision that would change everything forever. He approached Maya with reverential respect and said loudly enough for everyone to hear, "Miss Johnson, your father would be the proudest man on the planet right now. This demonstration not only honors his memory, but sets a new standard of excellence for this entire military base." The words hit Steele like bullets. Suddenly, the implications of the entire situation crystallized in his mind. He had publicly humiliated and mocked the order of a war hero killed in combat, a child who possessed skills that exceeded those of anyone under his command. Worse, he had done so in front of witnesses, soldiers who were already whispering among themselves, some taking discreet photos with their cell phones. The story would spread throughout the entire base before the day was over and beyond. The colonel who mocked a grieving child and was humiliated by her exceptional competence. How? Steele finally managed to articulate, his voice sounding strange and distant. How can Ackle shoot like that? Maya looked at him directly for the first time since Sesh had arrived at the shooting range. My father taught me that respect earned through actions, not words. He taught me that when someone doubts you based solely on prejudice, the best response is to demonstrate exactly what you are capable of. The devastating simplicity of the response struck Averian present like a bolt of lightning. Here was a 12-year-old child offering a lesson in dignity and competence to senior officers who were supposed to be her role models. Rodriguez moved closer. "Miss Johnson, your father mentioned that you had natural talents, but he never specified," He never said you were." He paused, searching for the right words. "Would Yaub interested in demonstrating your skills at longer distances?" Maya's eyes sparkled. "With genuine interest." "What distance do you have in mind, Sergeant? 100 meters, 200, whatever's within your comfort zone." Steele watched this interaction with growing horror, realizing that his humiliation was only just beginning. The child he had tried to break publicly was about to demonstrate skills that would make his own military competence look amateurish. More soldiers had joined the group, drawn by the whispers spreading through the base like wildfire. Some veterans approached, with expressions of genuine respect, recognizing something special in what they were witnessing. Maya checked her weapon once more, her fluid, professional movements contrasting sharply with the growing nervousness of the officers who had underestimated her. Sergeant Rodriguez, 200 meters, would be a good next step. It was at that moment that Steele realized a terrible truth. Little Maya Johnson hadn't just come to prove a point. She had come to teach Allison about prejudice, competence, and respect that none of those present would ever forget. And the lesson was just beginning. As new targets were prepared for distances that would challenge event professional shooters, a question hung in the tension-filled air. Would Mac continue to surprise everyone? Or would she finally reach the limits of her extraordinary abilities? And more importantly, what other lessons about dignity and determination did a 12-year-old child still have to teach these adult men who thought they knew their own limits? 6 months after the day that shook Fort Braxton, Maya Johnson walked through. The base riders with a gold badge hanging around her neck. Junior Precision Marksman Instructor Army Exception Elton Program. At 13, she had become the youngest person in American military history to receive such official recognition. That fateful morning had turned into a legendary demonstration. After 200 meters, Maya had continued shooting 300, 400, 500 meters. Each distance revealed even more impossible accuracy. When she hit a target the size of a coin at 500 meters using only iron sights, war veterans began to cry openly. The video of the demonstration recorded discreetly soldiers present went viral internationally. Little girl Humiliatrasis Colonel with impossible shot racked up 47 million views in 2 weeks. Maya had become global symbol of overcoming prejudice. For Colonel Steele, the consequences were devastating and definitive. The military investigation that followed revealed a systematic pattern of discriminatory behavior. Dozens of military families came forward with similar accounts of humiliation and prejudice. Photographs of him mocking Maya circulated throughout military media, accompanied by captions such as "the man who underestimated a legend." Steele was formally demoted, transferred to an isolated base in Alaska, and assigned to basic administrative duties. His military retirement, planned with full honors, turned into a quiet and embarrassing exit. Even more humiliating, he now worked under the supervision of Black and Hispanic officers who knew his story too well. Major Thompson and Captain Williams faced official reprimands and were required to participate in intensive training on diversity and respect. Their military careers never fully recovered from the stain of having participated in the public humiliation of a child. Maya, on the other hand, flourished in ways no one could have predicted. The Pentagon created a special program allowing her to combine regular studies with advanced military training. Elite universities competed for her future admission with full scholarships. Military equipment companies wanted to sponsor her development. More importantly, she had inspired an entire generation. Children from marginalized communities sent letters, telling how Mia's story motivated them to pursue dreams that seemed impossible. Black girls, in particular, saw her as proof that competence and determination were more powerful than prejudice. Rodriguez, promoted to staff sergeant for his exemplary conduct during the incident, became Mia's official mentor. Your father would be bursting with pride, Hess said one afternoon, watching Maya train new recruits who listened to her with absolute reverence. But I think he would be even prouder of the woman offshore actor you are becoming. The shooting range where it all began was renamed David Johnson Shooting Range in honor of Mia's father. A bronze plaque told Thestry of that transformative day, serving as a permanent reminder that excellence can emerge from the most unexpected places. Mia still visited her father's grave every Saturday, but Nosh no longer cried. Instead, she told him about her new records, her achievements, and the prejudices she had broken down during the week. "I did it, Dad," she always whispered at the end. "I showed them what we're capable of." The entire base had changed. Zero-tolerance policies for discrimination were implemented. Talent identification prags in underserved communities became a priority. Maya's story wastled in every leadership training session as an example of how prejudice can blind people to extraordinary. Most ironic of all, Steele had inadvertently created the exact opposite of what he intended. Instead of humiliating Maya, he had given her the perfect platform to shine in front of witnesses who would never forget what they had seen. His attempt to diminish her had become the catalyst for the greatest transformation in the history of the base. In a television interview 6 months later, Maya was asked if she held a grudge against Colonel Steele. Her response revealed wisdom far beyond her years. "He gave me the greatest gift possible, the opportunity to prove him wrong about me." Sometimes our greatest opponents end up being our best teachers, even if they don't mean to be. Maya Johnson had learned the most valuable lesson of all, the best revenge is not to destroy those who tried to diminish you, but to grow so much that your achievements become impossible to ignore. She turned humiliation into motivation, prejudice into fuel, and underestimation into super determination. The little girl who walked into the officers' club asking permission to honor her father had become a force of nature who rewrote the rules about human potential, prejudice, and the transformative power of never ever underestimating someone based solely on appearances. If this story of determination and justice touched your heart, subscribe to the channel to discover more inspiring stories of people who turn their greatest humiliations into the most epic victories of their lives.